Hello and welcome to today's session on Lean Startup Principles. Your presenter today is Sebastian Adolfi. Sebastian Adolfi teaches entrepreneurship and innovation management at Humboldt University, Berlin. As educational program manager at the Startup Incubator, he enables students and researchers to develop their business ideas and guides their journey in starting companies. An engineer by trade, he built his expertise as lecturer, scientist, and consultant in engineering design methodology and product development at various Berlin research institutions. His current research focus is on personalities, competencies, and roles in startup teams. Finally, just to introduce myself, my name is Kelechi Amako, and I work with Researcher Academy here in Amsterdam. Today's session, we will last approximately 60 minutes. After Sebastian's presentation, we will consider some frequently asked questions on Lean Startup Principles. You can visit the Researcher Academy Mendeley group to pose any remaining questions to other researchers just like you. The link to the Mendeley group can be found under Resources on the bottom right of your page. We recommend you join the group. One more housekeeping announcement before we move on to the webinar. The slides of this presentation and any other documents relevant to this webinar can be found under Downloads, also on the right-hand side of your Researcher Academy screen. Thank you so much for joining us today. And over to you, Sebastian.
Thanks a lot for the introduction. Welcome from my side to everybody as well. I will just right away jump into the outline for today. On this slide, you see what I'm going to talk about. First, I will take a short recap on what a business model is. You can find more information on this in a different webinar. Then I will go into the Lean Startup Principles, and after that we will see how you can move on from a classical business model canvas to a Lean canvas. After we finish this, I will give you a short outlook on what you might also be looking into, and then we will have our Q&A session. So, first of all, a very short recap on what is a business model. What you see here is a model containing the basic elements and their relations within a business model. I will briefly explain these to you because they are important as an understanding for how Lean Startup is different from classical business development. So what you see here is on the left side a company. This company has resources and uses these resources in different activities and processes to create solutions, and these solutions are embedded in goods and services which should provide a value to some customer. So you can switch to the right side. There you see different customer segments which represent the different customers inside a market, and these customers have problems and needs which are asking for the value which the company is providing. And if the value is right for the customer and is right for their problem or their need, they are going to pay for it, which is going to bring revenue to the company. So this is the basic relationship between customer and company. These sales and buying processes typically are within the channels which are established between the company and the market. So you can have online distribution, or you can have retail stores, or different kind of channels in order to facilitate this transaction. In addition, you typically have different other customer relationships. This might be service relationships, or the guarantees you have between companies and the customers for the products. You also have within these customer relationships any kind of marketing you're going to do, and so on. So you have, depending on your industry and your business and your product, you have specific customer relationships to the people who are buying and using your products and services. Outside of these relationships, you have different other players which also influence the business model. You have, on the one side, partners of the company. These provide resources to the company in order to create the solution. And on the other side, you have in the marketplace, or in different marketplaces, you have competitors of the company who are providing competitive solutions to the solution of the company. If you take in account all these different elements, you have a basic understanding of the business model of a specific product and a specific company. The tool commonly used to describe such business models is the business model canvas by Alexander Osterwalder. He developed this as a method to depict a business model just on one sheet. So he selected the most important elements of the business model in order to be able to describe this in one sitting. And the business model canvas is still the most used tool in order to describe business models. Of course, there are different variants of canvases. Many people have tried to change it or to develop other kind of canvases, but this one is still the one which is most widely used. So much for the recap. If you want to get more information on the business models and on the basics of business development, you can watch the Business Development for Researchers webinar. Now we will move on to the topic for this webinar, which is Lean Startup Principles. So the basic idea for Lean Startups is to make it lean, to make business development and business models lean, to cut time and to cut costs in order to be successful and have an advantage. This approach is specifically, as the title already says, developed for startups, but the origin of lean is more in production processes in companies. Lean management and other lean approaches have existed for a long time, so you can also use this lean startup approach in different kind of institutions. Regarding the business model, there are some changes to the model I've just explained to you regarding the classic understanding. So the focus for Lean Startup is on uniqueness and speed. So you have to be unique in order to be successful, and you have to be fast in order to be successful. These are the two assumptions underlying the Lean Startup approach. And in this context of business development, that means that you have to create an advantage by your uniqueness. So you have to, this is what I've tried to show on this slide, you have to armor your solution. So your solution has to be unique, so you have to have to have a solution which is unique in a unique value proposition, and also you need what is called in Lean Startup an unfair advantage above your competitors. So this makes your solution stronger and better to defend your solution. What you also see on the company side is another typical and important element of Lean Startup, which is you test and measure your solution all the time. Regarding the second focus, which is speed, this is what you see in the middle in the channel, which is called MVP, or and the revenue. MVP is standing for minimal viable product. So the approach in this situation is to create not the perfect product or the best product, but a product which is just good enough in order to survive on the marketplace, and to do this as fast as possible. Of course, the solution still has to fit to the problem and the need, and you still have to reach your customers in their different customer segments, but by creating a solution which is unique and which has an unfair advantage, and to do this as fast as possible by not creating the perfect product or service, but just the right product and service in form of an MVP, you are going to be faster on the market, and this will be the main two advantages in order to outcompete your competitors and make them irrelevant to you. So if you have this understanding in comparison to the model I showed you in the beginning, you have a basic understanding of what the Lean Startup approach means in order of business development. Beyond these two focus points, there are three big ideas within the Lean Startup approach, which I now want to explain to you in more detail. So this is important in order to know how you can implement the Lean Startup approach to be faster and to create unique solutions. You see here a cycle and three elements. One element you already are accustomed with. This is the minimal viable product. This is the preliminary product you create in order to enter the market as fast as possible. Beyond speed, the second function of the MVP is to be able to test your product. If you are taking the classic approach and using a lot of development time, research and development time, in order to create a very complex product, then you will not be able to learn and improve the product before it's entering the market. So what you do in the Lean Startup approach is you put a product which is just good enough into the market, let the customers try the product, collect data, measure the success of the product, and by testing the product, you will get the information back into your company and decide whether you can continue the same way or if you should change your direction. And this is the third element which you see here, which is called pivot. So this is a crucial element of Lean Startup. You have to decide after you collected the measurements and the data if you should continue with the same product and the same business model, or if there's any aspect of your business model that should be changed. These are the three most important ideas of the Lean Startup approach. If you are going to use these, there's a more detailed description of this cycle. This is the so-called Build, Measure, Learn feedback loop by Eric Ries. Eric Ries is the creator of the Lean Startup approach, and he also created this Build, Measure, Learn feedback loop as one of the main methods within his strategy. What you see here is in principle just a more detailed description of what I've already showed you on the last slide. So let's take a look on this. You have on the left side the item build. You turn your ideas into products. This is the first step. This is what you do when you create your MVP. You also take an approach in starting with just one customer, so you're not trying to satisfy all the different customer segments on the market. You're focusing on one early customer which you can satisfy with your minimal viable product. And what you also do during this build phase is you simulate your product with people. You test it within your company with people, and then you deliver it, your MVP, to the market. The second phase is the measure phase. Here you see how your customers respond to your product. So this is the phase which was formerly called testing or measuring. Of course, this is highly intertwined. So you bring your MVP to the market, you collect by different measures how the customers respond, and you can do this by the classical methods. One of them is, for example, the split test or A/B test, where you deliver different variants of a product and see which is going to be more successful. And by this you can learn about your product. If you have finished the tests and you have measured all the data you are interested in, you come to the learn phase. Here in the learning phase, you decide if you are going to pivot or persevere. So if you are going to change direction or if you're going to go on the same way and just continue the development of your product in the same direction. So this circle is not a one-time event in the development of your product. This circle is going for a long time. So even if you're on the right way, if you're not going to pivot, but if you're going to persevere, then you still start the circle again by building the next version of your minimal viable product. And you're doing this so long as to the point when your product is really finished. So this is not a classical development circle where you start in the beginning and then there's an end. And in this Lean Startup approach, you're doing this circle for a long, long time. Even when your product is already on the market for a longer time, you can still, by collecting data from the market, suddenly learn that there are changes, for example, in the needs of the customer, or there are different new competitors, and then you can also come into a situation where you still have to decide whether you can just go on the same way and just produce the product, or if you have to go back to the drawing table and change your product. If you take a look on this loop, it may seem familiar to you as researchers, because this, of course, is not entirely new. There are different approaches which also use different kind of circles in order to describe improvement processes or learning processes. You may know the plan, do, act loop, or one which is maybe even more familiar with you is the classical scientific method, which is quite similar, I think. Of course, I know there are differences in the scientific method as it was first proposed by Francis Bacon in 1620. regarding to the modern scientific method, but the basic ideas are still the same, and they are quite similar to the lean startup approach. So you build something, which is in this case a theory or a hypothesis, and you make predictions in this about the reality of nature, for example, and then you're going to test it. You're going to make experiments. In these experiments, you observe, or in other words, you measure what is going to happen, and then you either change or reject the theory. So you're going back to the building phase, and you're going to build new scientific theories and start the loop again. So this is quite similar to the lean startup approach. Now, if you have understood the basic principles of the lean startup approach, I want to take a look on a different method which is going to be helpful to implement the approach. I will show you how you come from the classical business model canvas to the lean canvas, because there's a canvas here as well. And there are some changes to the business model canvas. There are some fields which are going to be replaced. So the approach was taken to remain within the format of the business model canvas, but to choose to change some of the items which are placed inside the canvas. So this is corresponding to what I've shown you between the business model, which is the classical approach, and the lean startup business model. So you have seen there that the partners have not been in consideration, as well as their resources and so on. So this is implemented in the canvas as well. The key partners are substituted by problems. The key activities are substituted by solution. The key resources are substituted by key metrics. The value proposition is substituted by unique value proposition, and the customer relationships are replaced by unfair advantage. So what you now have is a different version of the canvas, which is not saying that the classical business model canvas is wrong. It just means that the lean startup approach suggests that some items, some different items, are more important to put on the canvas. So it's bringing a focus on the relationship between problem solution and the uniqueness of the value proposition, and also highlight the importance of uniqueness by the unfair advantage. And as an additional element, it brings in the key metrics, which are related to the build, measure, learn cycle, because here you have to define by which measures you will learn from the testing process. Many people ask how you can best use the lean canvas, which is the starting point, and how should you proceed in using the canvas. There have been different suggestions which is the right order, but this is the one which the creator of the lean canvas, Ash Maurya, used in his first publication. So he started with the definition of the problem. Here you should define the top 3 most important problems of the second one, related to the second item, which is the target customers in the customer segment. And if you know what the problems is and who has the problem, then you can define the unique value proposition. This should be a single, clear, compelling message that states why you are different and worth buying. If you have found a unique value proposition, you can, in the fourth step, you can define the top 3 features of your solution. So you go more into detail, which should be the solution in order to facilitate your unique value proposition. If you are clear about your solution, you can think about what could be an unfair advantage. An unfair advantage primarily means that you need something which is not easy to copy or buy into. So you need at least an advantage in time. So for example, you have developed a new technology which cannot just easily be copied, or you need a different element of your business element which cannot be copied right away. This would be an unfair advantage. In the 6th step, you take a look at your revenue streams. So you need to find a revenue model, which means you have to understand how the customer is going to pay and how much he's going to pay for your product. And there are many different revenue models you can apply. And when you have understand your revenue models, how you generate your income, then you have to take a look on the other side of the balance sheet and define the cost structure of your business model. The most important part in the beginning, if you start a company, are the customer acquisition costs. So you have to know how much you have to spend in order to find customers. If you have found the customers, you can, of course, go into distribution, and you have also the need of understanding what the costs for distribution are, and then are the different other costs related to the processes of your company. In the 8th step, you take a look on key activities you need to measure. You need to know, to understand and define what are the activities of the customer you want to measure in order to get a better understanding of how your product is accepted or not accepted by the customer. And at last, you take a look on the channels. You need to know your path to the customers. And if you have finished these 9 steps, you have the Lean Canvas business model. In a later publication, he switched the order of problem and customer. So now he says you should first understand the customer segments or find the customer segments you want to address, and then take a look at their problems. So this is a different approach. You can do this in some situations. It depends on your starting positions. And if you take a look on your own situation, many of you might also start by the solution. The solution in many cases is the starting point, because this is something which happens naturally. You coming up with ideas for great solutions, and then have to go a step back and take a look if your solution is really related to an existing problem in an existing market. So there are different starting points for building a business, and in general there's not a right or wrong order how to do this, but there's a certain logic which information you have to gather first and which points you have to define first. But in general, the process of business development is a highly dynamic process, so you will always have to go back to different steps and change different elements in your canvas. So there's not really a right or a wrong way to do this. In order for you to get a more detailed understanding, I've also included an example in the webinar. I'm not going to read all of this to you now. If you want to take a look on this, just take a pause and look into this. This is showing the original model of business model of Google. Of course, in this time, the lean startup approach was not existing, so this has been done in hindsight, and shows the original Google business model from as it has been created in 1989. So this is also related just to the original search engine, not to the company we know today. If you have understood the different fields, the different segments of the Lean Canvas, the next natural question would be, how should I use the canvas? And just like the business model canvas, the Lean Canvas is also a tool which is used in different situations throughout your business development process. So if you are interested in starting a company, or if you are interested in develop new stuff within a company you're working in or within your research institutions, then you have the opportunity to use the Lean Canvas throughout the entire development process. Normally you start with plan A, so this is something which you can write down right away, just which is what is in your head. You write it down in the canvas. Maybe you have different ideas, so you have different versions of your plan A, and you will have to decide which direction you're going to take, so you throw some of them out. The next step, you identify the riskiest parts of your plan, and by identifying the risk and analyzing the risk, you are going to be able to develop the plan further. You change it, you add new information. The next step, you are able to really understand the problem, and this will eliminate some of your approaches as well. So you're going to be able to eliminate another version, and then in the next step, you definitely define the solution. So you select one of the maybe different solutions you have developed for the understood problem, and you select one of them to go further on. And in this phase, you now systematically test your plan. You now have just only one plan, and you test it, and you further improve it. The next step would be to validate your plan qualitatively. What are you aiming for is the so-called product market fit. So after you already found a match between the problem and solution, now you have to find a match between the product and the market. So you have to find out if the market is interested in your product. And if you have verified this and you have found a product market fit, then you can start to verify quantitatively after you're going to scale your product. So you're not working with a single customer and your MVP, but now you're going to scale your product and your company, and you are going to sell more products. And by being on a larger scale, you will be able to test and verify your plan quantitatively. So this is the entire process of using the Lean Canvas from the very start to the point when you are able to launch a product on scale. So much on the Lean startup approach and the Lean Canvas. Maybe some of you will have the problem that you don't have an idea to start with. This is also no problem. If you don't have a business idea, there's a very good other webinar from a colleague of mine. This is on design thinking, You can find this in the Researcher Academy as well. There you can learn about methods on how to better understand customers, to analyze customers, to analyze the market, and to create business ideas. And I would highly recommend this to you if you don't have one yet. As an outlook for this webinar and for further readings, I want to show you the main sources for this webinar. The first one is the Lean Startup book by Eric Ries. So this is the original source, and here the approach is described very good in order to understand the principles. So if you want to go more into detail on the different aspects of the Lean Startup approach, I would highly recommend this book to you. And the second one is Running Lean by Ash Maurya. He has written this book in collaboration with Eric Ries, and he is the creator of the Lean Canvas. So he has used the Lean Startup approach in order to change the classical business model canvas and to create a tool which helps to implement the Lean Startup approach. Of course, there are many more resources on this in the internet and in different other books, but these, if you're going to start with Lean Startup, I would recommend these two for the start in order to get started. So this is the webinar on Lean Startup, and I thank you for your attention. And I'm eager to hear your questions on this issue.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sebastian, and thank you for the exposition on Lean Startup principles. Before we go, I have 3 frequently asked questions that I want you to provide your perspective on. I will start with the first. It reads, are Lean Startup principles only for product development?
Okay. Well, there are two answers to this question. First of all, the Lean Startup approach is not primarily an approach for product development, but for company development. So if you take a look on what Eric Ries has to say about this, he says that it's the task of an entrepreneur is not just to develop a product or a service, but it's even primarily to develop a company which will be able to survive. Because in many cases, founders are able to create a product or a service which may be successful on the market on the long run, but they fail in building a company which is able to survive as long as it takes to get enough revenue. So this is the first answer. The second one is, I think you can also use the approach which you find in the main ideas, for example, to create unique solutions, to create them fast, and to not work too long on solutions or something else, but to go out into the world and hand your solution to different people, and by this test it. I think you can transfer this approach to many different fields. For example, into research, you can, as one model of research, work for yourself very long on one issue and only present it to somebody else if you think you're finished with all the work and all the work is done. Or you can take a more collaborative approach and work together with different researchers. You show them your preliminary results, you test them, and by this you will get feedback and be able to decide whether you should go on in the same way or maybe change direction. So these main ideas of the lean startup approach can very well be transferred into different situations.
Okay. Thank you for the robust answers. That leads me to the second question. You talked about minimum viable product, that's the MVP. So this question would want to know what are the differences that we have between MVP and the prototype?
Okay, this is a good question which I get quite often because it's not entirely clearly defined in the literature, but in my understanding, the main difference between an MVP and a prototype is the purpose for which it is created. A prototype, typically, classically, is created within your company in order to make tests within your company on the product. So it's not created to give it to the customer. Of course, there are some prototypes which are used to show and to display, but they are not sold to customers in order to be used as products. On the other hand, the MVP is also in many aspects similar to a prototype, but it's created for the purpose of delivering it to the customer, selling it to the customer, and being used by the customer. So this is a crucial difference between an MVP and a prototype. In the concrete or in the physical appearance, an MVP and a prototype can be quite similar or even the same, but the purpose is a different one.
Okay, thank you. That takes me to the last and final question for this webinar. It says, how do I test my MVP?
Okay, this goes more into the details of how you actually implement the startup approach, the lean startup approach. There are different ways of testing the MVP. As I explained, the main idea is that you hand your MVP to the customer. And depending on the type of MVP you have, of course, there are different methods you can use. There are many different representations or versions of MVPs depending on the product. For example, if you're creating a software or you're creating a web platform, then of course you can create, for example, a dummy website or just a landing page or something like this. And in the first step, you just take a look on how the customers are interested in your solution. If you are in a more advanced stage of your development, you can steadily add features to your software, for example, and by this you can find out more about the responses of the customers and how they use the features and so on, which features are really needed. And this is highly different depending on the product and the stage you're in. But the general idea is you give some kind of solution, some kind of product or service to the customer, and you define upfront what information you are going to collect. This is incorporated in the design of the MVP. So you design the MVP in the way that it delivers this information. And then you, of course, have to find a way to collect data. This is also depending on your product. For IT products, this is much more simple than for physical products, but you have to find a way to collect the information from the customer. And the last stop of the test process is the evaluation of the data you get. the evaluation of the information, and there you also have to find the right methods in order to get the understanding you need to learn from this entire testing process.
Thank you so much, Sebastian. We would like to go more and on, but unfortunately we are out of time and we must stop the webinar now. But before we go, I would like to extend a vote of thanks to our fantastic speaker, Sebastian. I am sure we can agree that this has been a useful session and there has been much to take home, especially the tips to lean startup principles. To take your learning further, you might wish to review some of the various articles and other resources which are available via the Researcher Academy webinar page, which you are currently on. We have collected these materials as they are highly relevant to the topic we discussed today. I would like to take the opportunity to thank you for giving us your attention. Also, apologies to those whose questions haven't been addressed during the webinar. If that is the case, fear not. You can raise any outstanding questions in the Researcher Academy Mendeley group. You would find the link under the resources section on the bottom right of this webinar page. Finally, if you didn't manage to catch all the webinar or want to re-review it, we are pleased to confirm that you are able to view the webinar on demand from the website Researcher Academy. You can also claim your certificate for attendance and learn about our other tools, events, and courses. Thank you once again, and I wish you the best in your future endeavors.